Hello and welcome back to the ARKV podcast. My name is Noah,
And my name is Gavin.
and we are the Blanchard brothers. Feels very nice to say that once again, and also feels great to tell you that we are joined by one of our favorite returning guests, Mr. Barham Williams. Say hello.
Well, howdy, folks.
That's right. That's right. You're
If only they could see him right now, it would make it 10 times better.
you gentlemen both are like absolutely killing it with the beard and hair game, I must say.
Well, I had to get
Must
trimmed
say.
up for the kilt.
Yeah.
We're all in fairly good shape right now. My lighting's pretty fucking terrible, but maybe we'll put this up on Patreon if people want to, get a
Get a
taste.
look see.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What are we here to
little
do,
thirst
fellas?
trap.
Yeah. A little late, mid to late 30s thirst trap.
Yep.
Okay.
Little staring 40s in the face. Yeah.
Yeah, this is
Um,
this is definitely what everybody expected to hear at the top of this episode. Okay, what are we here to do, gentlemen? We have banded together once again to discuss two big old things in the world of entertainment. We got stuff that crosses over between the TV arc and the movie arc, and we're gonna kick it off. We'll tell you from time. People can read the episode description. We're here to talk about Fallout and Civil War, and technically,
War
Fallout.
never changes.
War.
Dude, there it is.
Dramatic
You
pause.
found it.
War never changes. That's it.
War never changes.
Okay, well, that's definitely the title of the episode, and I'm an idiot, and what do I know? Oh God, it was right there. It was there for the
What I
taking
know, Noah, is
the
that
whole time.
war never changes.
I was gonna say, give me your best, Perlman. Give it to me. Okay, so TV arc first. We're gonna kick it off with Fallout, which technically they came out the same week. It's been a little bit. We've had time to digest both. Everybody's finished the series. Some people I'm sure have already gone back and binged through it.
Mhm.
Some maniacs I'm sure have already done that. And of course, Civil War has been tearing it up at the box office for 2 weeks. Finally got dethroned this week by Zendaya herself. But yeah,
Well, that's just way sexier, but
Challengers, incredible movie. Second favorite movie of the year. And
All right.
we all know what's number one. So, anyways, we'll save that for later in this podcast. Fallout. Let's go around the horn. Uh, as is tradition, the guest, Baron. Overall thoughts. What do you think of the series?
Oh, it hit the vibe of the games just perfectly. Like the humor, the tone. You have, characters go in for a nice romantic kiss, and the severed heads they're holding also accidentally kiss. Just hit the tone so spot on at every single turn. Absolutely loved it. Even Tari, who's usually not a huge lover of like super gory, violent stuff or video games, was just like, I want more. Like, I immediately want more.
Yeah. Gavin, brother.
I just think that with the numbers now, I mean, we all know it is like 65 million hours or something like that. Like just huge number of watches. I don't know what it is. It just proves that if you just give everybody the thing, they'll consume it. Because if this is week to week, like The Boys or any of these other Amazon series, doesn't happen. Not as big a deal. But everybody could sit at home and they could binge the whole thing and they could just love it. And people who never played a game before, who are like, wow, this is interesting. Oh, wait a minute. There's all these games it's based off of. I think it was the perfect note. I think The Last of Us showed everybody like you can bring video games into television, but like this proved that like as long as you are like as faithful as possible to the source material, but don't necessarily like adhere to it 100%, you can do things with some of these big like I mean, to me this opens up like Elden Ring, Elder Scrolls, all these other
Hold
things,
those thoughts. Hold those thoughts.
Okay, yeah,
Hold
it
those
opens
thoughts.
up all that. But yeah, I thought it was perfect. Probably my
Okay.
favorite series of the year so far.
All right. All right. Big high praise. High praise.
Yes.
Okay. So I want to piggyback off of two things you said there. So I would counter on the binge thing because I feel like it hit and it hit big and it's had a huge moment and I would say a decent long tail. I would say they could have like owned the first chunk of the summer as far as television's concerned, because there's not a lot right now that's like getting everybody's eyeballs. There's not that like
Hmm.
singular show. If they had done the 3 episodes, drop three and then go week to week, like with the remaining five, I'm just saying they could have stretched this out even further, but I feel like it's sustaining itself because of the games. Dude, the amount of Fallout content that is just like in all of my social media
Oh,
feeds
absolutely.
of like, hey, it's literally like again 4 that's been out for like shit almost 8 years.
9 years,
Yeah, 8 or 9 years
8 or 9 years.
now.
Yeah,
It's
2015.
just like, all of a sudden all this content is just like right back out there. Um,
Right, but
Oh, I'm replaying for you.
so
they're
again,
gonna own the whole. They're gonna own everything
I
because
just
Fallout's
I would
April.
not be surprised if season two, knowing like what a huge thing they have now, if they go week to week, the same way they did with the boys. Because the boys initially was like we drop it in a binge, and then they realize what they had on their hands, and it's like, oh, dude, we can like actually own a longer share of the conversation and have people like that online culture that still exists of like people breaking down episode by episode TV culture that people are still passionate for that exists, especially in the podcast realm. Like, you get way more of that as opposed to when you drop something in a binge like this. We do sit here and it's like we're like a week and a half removed because we don't really know how to talk about it. It's like I don't know how far along some people are versus others and everything. And it's like we kind of just waited until I knew we had all seen it. And Civil War, for instance, it's like, you know, you guys got busy schedules. Barham went and caught it yesterday?
Yeah, today.
Word. And Gav, I knew it was going to be a bit for you to see it. I'm glad you and Bex got to catch it. That's awesome.
Well,
But it's
thank mom and dad for that
well, hell yeah. Thank the
because
babysitters.
they came and watched Mav. So
But yeah, anyways, so there was another thing I was going to piggyback off of. Oh, the Last of Us comparison and the video game thing. I have definitely said to Barham over the phone, uh, I have no problem just unequivocally saying like this is the best video game adaptation that's ever been done, period.
hmm.
Like, because Last of Us, as like high quality, like,
It was serious
prestige
drama.
HBO as it possibly could be, at the same time, it's an adaptation of a game that is already trying to be so cinematic in its
Hmm.
storytelling that is aping movies. And then it's like this weird Ouroboros of like, then it like, okay, and then we readapt it into a prestige medium, as opposed to Fallout, where it's like, we're going to take this game, warts and all, you could say, all the weirdness, all the fucking shit that most
Yeah,
adaptations of
the game
video game
itself.
properties and a lot of like, you know, comic book properties for a long time, it's like you would run away from the weirder shit or try and like curb it and like make it more palatable in some way, as
Right.
opposed to just like, no, this is inherently like what the thing's about and embracing that. And that's where I'm like, the way they organically like it's like you could sit there and be like, "Oh, this is a video game ass like television show in its structure," and I'm like, "But it is Fallout like to a T, down to like the mission structure, the side quest, the like to the point where I and Gab, sorry, let me step back for a second. I don't think you and I have ever talked about the games. I know Barham, like, I mean, you were playing New
Yeah,
Vegas when we lived across
seven.
from each other, and three, like, we've played them basically side by side for a bit. We've talked about it. But Gavin, what is your like relationship to the franchise, gaming wise, going
I
into
mean,
this?
basically the four in New Vegas, like just in general, getting and that's the other thing is like there's so much of like condensing what I would consider maybe like three, but New Vegas three, and if I mean, we can talk about the ending in a minute, but like just condensing all these games, you could argue that it's like iconically they're like iconography they're going for like four because it's the most relevant for people. I mean that's the closest thing they can draw in, you know. But there's such a backstory in all of these other games, and there's all these other things. It's like when he says like when Walton Goggins, when the ghoul was like, hey, you'll get sidetracked by other bullshit or whatever. I was like, that's perfect. That's this TV show explaining to anybody who cares to listen exactly what these games are like. You got to go get this thing that this big fish took, but you know what? Fucking sidetrack for a side quest. We got to go do this other thing real quick, and so you have to go going through God knows what all the way to this whole other thing to you know by the time you come back to get what you're supposed to get, it's long gone. It felt like the easiest, most complete representation of telling somebody like, oh yeah, this is exactly what it's like to play that game. Just watching it, not like you like, oh, I'm watching
Down
somebody play it, but like down to like the shooting and like
well,
the
and down to the individual player classes, the different
right.
play styles of like, okay, we're gonna have like three representations of how somebody might like, you know, approach
approach.
their playthrough.
It comes from in the same way of like Baldur's Gate. It is a D&D style. I was just doing some research into like the original Fallout games. It was one of like the newest, like the sort of the revamp of like the D&D style tabletop role play games just on a computer. So it has that kind
Right.
of open world feel to it. So all that lore just builds upon itself and you
Hmm.
can put yourself anywhere in it.
Yeah.
And you
Do
could
it if
go,
you want to within that.
you
And I
could,
think
and
it's
you could
brilliant.
never even encounter half the things that you see in the show if you were just like casually playing it. That's what I was trying to tell Bex is like this one thing, like you could literally spend 20 hours trying to like rebuild something or like put a little hut together or like a little area together you want to build and never touch the story proper, or you could just
Oh yeah.
try and play straight through the story and see where that gets you. So but I feel like the show, like, it just captures all that perfectly between the story they tell that is like, you could argue is like, well, it's exactly like a Fallout game, but it's not a Fallout game at all. You
Mhm.
know,
Well, that's what I was
there's,
gonna say is
you
to the
know,
point where I don't like again, I don't say this as a negative. Uh I found the show like kind of predictable in a lot of its quote unquote like twists and turns
hmm
just because it's like well, I've played a fucking Fallout game. I've played through a quest
Yeah,
line where it's
nothing
like
is
you
simple.
think you're doing one good thing for like this party, but come to realize like oh you're being double crossed or oh you actually were being manipulated into doing this other thing or like you thought you were being heroic, you actually were the villain. All of that sort of stuff. It's like I
But
could
not even
kind
that.
I
It's
I could kind of see some stuff like coming where I think your broader audience is a little more just like following it as a traditional like story narrative, I guess is what I'm saying. Like there was a
right.
lot of stuff that I was like, oh, that was not a shocker, or oh, they lingered on that person for a second. Something's off. And part of that's just TV brain, but
Yeah, no, that makes sense.
I couldn't tell who was frozen. Barham might be frozen. Barham definitely looks like he's frozen. Gavin, keep talking.
Okay.
He'll figure it out.
Yeah, no, I mean, and again, I say the performances. Like, can we not? This is just another. It's another vessel or venue for people to just understand and like get to know the brilliance of Walton Goggins, because I feel like there's
Just
still people who don't know.
undefeated for like for decades now.
Yeah, he tells a story about like him going into Karate Kid to audition for the lead bad guy next Karate Kid, and they told him like, "Well, no, sorry, you can't." And he went back in and was like, "Well, I mean, could I just, you know, I just want to work on this thing." And they're like, "Well, would you be like the second bad guy?" And he was like, "Well, hell yeah." And they're like, "Oh, we didn't think you would want to." The fuck, I wouldn't. Like, yeah, I'll do that. And then he goes back to his job where he was selling boots, and he was like, "Fuck y'all, I'm going into making movies," and he left. And he's
Mhm.
just never been back to that job ever since, because like he got to do what he wanted to do. He just needed to put in the door, talk to the right person. And I mean, he's just been there forever on TV. And he showed up in movies as well. I forgot he was in Predators. I watched that the other night. And I was like, damn, he's in here too, It's just he's one of those people that it's like you again, he's been there. He kills it in everything he does.
He can literally do anything. And that's what I
Yeah.
kind of really, really like about this performance in particular and the split narrative structure, which is obviously like it's the Nolans are not showrunners on this, but obviously Jonathan directed the first three, I think. I think
Hmm.
Lisa Joy was involved with some of the script as well. But so of course we're dealing with like the split timeline sort of thing, but I think it worked kind of the best it has since maybe Westworld season one, as
Yeah.
far as like building up to reveals, et cetera, et cetera. Even though, again, I felt like I could see some of that sort of stuff coming. I don't think that's a fault of the show. Again, I think that's just it being very like true and faithful to the vibe of the games. But that split allows him to kind of show his range in as much as like you see him before. And it's
Hmm.
kind of a mode that you haven't seen Walton Goggins in. It's a like way more reserved, like, everyman sort of character that you don't
Right.
usually get to see him play. And then, you have the ghoul, which is like way more in the direction of something we're maybe used to from him. Uh, hold on,
Yeah.
getting a text from Barham.
Yeah, because I mean, and that's the thing is like where they've left it, and so much as like you know where the players are, but you don't find out until like literally the very end that like his whole journey, his whole quest is like where the hell is my family,
Hmm.
you know, and everything that you and I love that everything that is like presented to you, if you don't know the games, it's presented to you in so much as like, yeah, so this is just a thing. You're like, well, wait a minute, it's 200 some odd years in the future. Well, what? Why did? Why was there a nuclear blast
I've heard
in?
some people like that are very well paid professional podcasters
Mhm.
referring to the fact that, oh, this is, I could tell they're really doing something interesting with like kind of telling you this is a different version of like the 1950s because, Walton Goggins got a black wife. And I was like, do they not understand that
This was like
this is
2020
like
something.
this is the 2050s and we're in
Yeah.
an alternate future timeline where
We're,
basically the 60s never happened, like we just lived in like the beauty of the atomic age forever and nothing ever
yeah.
got bad and we just technology 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 until
Hmm.
inevitably, you know we had to
Well, and
nuke
they
the shit
but they
out of our
do
neighbors and
but they
or
well no
ourselves. Yeah.
they do the well they do the
But
perfect
I
thing of
think
basic.
that's what I'm saying is I think some people are still don't quite that haven't played the games are a little vague on like how that
They
this
think
is
it's World
not
War II. They don't know it's the
that they don't
Sino-American
get that
War
this
of
is not
2020. Yeah.
that they don't get that this is not our world. That you know what I
Right.
mean? That they don't get that this is an alt this is like a split timeline of, American history to begin with. Like
Right.
I think that's lost on some people, which is interesting. But yeah.
Well, and
Here
to
we
that
go.
effect,
Barham, back in. Barham, we were just discussing how I like uh
the
just
majority of people don't understand that we're 200
just the
years in the future
setting and
already.
like the idea that like does a broader audience understand the whole like this is 2270 or whatever, you know what I mean? Um I just because I mentioned I didn't name them. I'm not gonna, I don't know why I'm not gonna shame professionals, whatever. But I was just like, I was literally listening to some like, I'm sure well-paid professional podcasters who were talking about the fact that they were surprised and what tipped them off to like, oh, this is like, an interesting depiction of the 1950s. Like something else is going on here, because Goggins had a black wife and like
I
they
thought
kept
they covered
saying
that really clearly
no, no,
though.
no, no.
Like,
I was like they kept saying the 1950s and I literally was like, guys, like you get paid to do this shit. Like were you not paying attention to the show that this is 2050 and
well,
like
2077 to be specific.
well,
Right.
but I'm saying in the flashback timeline because we're
Yeah,
well
no, it's
it
no
was
2077. That's the year that everything went tits up. Was 2077.
do we not get anything with them before the kid is born?
We might no, we might get like 2076, 2075,
Okay,
but
because I see, I was a bit confused because it
he would have
seemed
been a
like
teenager in 2050.
true. I don't know what, whatever. My dates are vague. For some reason, I thought that we did jump back, like there was a gap of time before we get to like obviously yes 77 because he starts out and he's doing like birthday shit
That
at the
was
party
after.
or
That was the
whatever.
day. So
Yeah, that's
that was the
2077.
end. So what I assumed from that was that the tension with his wife that we saw at the very end when he found out kind of what was behind the veil,
Right.
that he had separated from her and he was kind of on the downswing because when he was doing the ads for Vault Tech, he was at like the peak of his game, and the dad was making fun of him for like, oh, he's just doing birthday parties now. Like,
That's what I was curious what the gap of time was in between there.
I would say years, a year to
Because
like several months to a
yeah,
year, maybe.
but
Like, but that was
we never
after.
see them pre-daughter.
Because we
No,
We
don't
never.
never,
know
yeah.
we don't know what happened to have him fall from grace because it's obvious that like he finds out, okay,
I was gonna
Tech
say
is
there's
like
still probably
willing to,
room to
yeah,
even go further back
yeah,
into all of that shit,
Oh,
which
absolutely,
I'm
and
very
how it all
excited
played
for.
out.
And I
yeah.
hope we continue. Bear, I'm sorry. I think so I don't think you were on for this. I was saying how I think this is like some of the best uh like multi-tiered timeline shit, maybe the most successful
Oh, absolutely.
since Westworld season one, because Westworld kind of like disappeared up its own ass trying to do that shit
Yeah.
in the latter seasons. But I think this one like actually really worked and built towards a finale, which I don't know for you guys. I was enjoying the show like throughout. I was having a great time with it, but I was kind of sitting there going like, is it gonna like is it gonna have something else? Like, is it gonna have another gear, so to speak? Like, this is entertaining, but am I like really like invested, so to speak? And I was surprised by like by the time I got to the end of the 8 episodes where I was like, oh, I'm actually like pretty fucking invested in these
Oh, yeah.
characters and like really excited to see where it goes. And it did like it managed to round the corner into like get I w- you know get me a little
Well, but that
hooked
again, just
emotionally speaking. I'm very interested to see where that side of things goes. We have not we talked about Goggins a bit while you're off mic. We have not talked about the real like the main lead of the show is Ella Purnell as Lucy.
yes. I was gonna
Yes,
say, going
who I
back to
think is
like Fallout
fantastic.
3, you have similar vibes. Like what I was gonna say earlier was right when everything cut out was that like whereas Last of Us like did a representation of a story that is being told in a game, this did a representation of the game, the tropes of the game within its own world. And part of that was, I mean, Fallout 3, that's the beginning part. You go looking for your father and then come to find out that he was not born in the vault, nor was your mother. That, this whole
Hmm.
lore that you grew up with was all false. Like all those tropes were then brought back into this.
Yeah.
And those are the parts of the game that make it really emotionally rewarding and really hook you in. I mean, you can get sucked down into it. Like, you find a random vault and start going through the computers and finding the story of what happened. That pulls you so deep into it.
Well,
And the
and
show did that too.
I, I'm sitting there, first episode, Kyle MacLachlan. Love to see him. One of my
God,
all-time
so
guys.
incredible.
One of my all-time
So
guys. And kind of knowing in the back of my head, I was like, okay, so dad's the quest for the season. And then it kind of dawning on me when we get to the end, and it's like, oh, oh, he he's gonna be a bad guy. He's gonna potentially be like the big bad of season two. And the satisfaction I had when I was like, oh, dude, I'm gonna get to see Kyle MacLachlan turn heel because Barham, I know you still have not finished Twin Peaks, but in
Oh my
season
God.
three, when you get to see him as Evil Cooper, as Dark Cooper, like
it's incredible. I'm
he
sure. I'm sure it's
plays
got to be
an
incredible.
incredible like bad guy. So I cannot wait to see where that goes. So many interesting things set up. Obviously the new Vegas tease, but let's still focus on this season. So Lucy as the protagonist, I thought so. Did you watch Yellow Jackets, Sparrow?
No, no, I have not. I
Oh,
feel like I've
dude,
seen
you're
her
man.
face in some promo. It's just
Oh,
when I haven't gotten around.
Jackie,
She
Jackie,
is
Jackie.
she is the one of the highlights of season one, which is really the only season you should bother watching. It kind of goes immediately off the rails in season two, in my personal opinion. But anyways,
I
uh
enjoyed it.
yeah. I mean it was an entertaining season of television, but you cannot sit here and tell me that it is like anywhere near comparable quality to season one. It's just not. It's just
Oh, no,
not.
no, it isn't.
Okay. But yeah, you should check it out, Bram. Still, anyways, she really popped in season one of that. But I thought she was great in this show. The one kind of
Oh,
question mark
absolutely.
for me personally in the first, in the early goings of the show was the Maximus character. Uh
I had, yeah,
took me a
we
while to warm up to him, if I'm gonna be honest.
it did, and I didn't know how to feel. I mean, even down to like at the end with was it Dane
Mm-hmm.
that like saying I cut my own ankle, like I
Right.
wasn't even sure whether to trust that, but it kind of fit in and made sense as it all sort of like wrapped up. But yeah, no, I did not like Maximus until God, I mean, it had to be like episode 6 or 7 before I started to be like, okay, because
I
he
mean,
kept every time
it
there was
was
a new
definitely
deal
like
broken.
when they went into the vault, they get into the safe vault, and he kind
Oh,
of
that was so fucking hilarious,
I
dude. That whole
that might have been
sequence.
where he won me over. Her just like why
He finally decides
he's like
to do the right
why would
thing.
I want to do that? Like when she's asked if you want to, why would I want to make my why would I want to touch my penis?
Well, he
Why
finally
would I want
takes
to make it
control over
explode?
his own life, though. He
That was
finally
great.
actually accepts that he is making a decision and goes for it. It just happens to be at the worst possible time, like,
Yeah.
but absolutely loved that. It was also a nice little comedic break with
hmm
everything going on. It just really, I think it lifted up the show a little bit, gave it a little levity that we
hmm
needed, and gave some backstory on and the tie-in with the ads.
hmm
Um, that Walton Goggins was doing, that tie-in with that family and what happened to them. Like,
Oh yeah.
I thought that was very of the show, just those little tie-ins. It's not really relevant that it's the same people, but everything's connected. It gives more of the vibe of the game to the
Yeah,
show.
absolutely. Uh other highlights, lowlights, things we're excited for in season 2.
Was that
And then
Michael Rappaport in that armor?
Yeah,
yeah,
which like yeah,
Yeah.
fuck that
What?
I was gonna say I personally thought that was
Seriously, fuck
genius
that dude.
casting
No, I thought
because
that was perfect as
I was gonna say
well.
genius casting for the guy you want like sitting there giving you shit and the entire audience going like, yeah, you can let that guy die.
Kill the fucker.
I'm totally fine with that. I'm totally fine with this decision to just
But
like
also good
watch
writing on the
this.
fact that they
Yeah.
made me still not like Maximus, even when I'm just like, no, I fully
hmm
agree with like, do not save this fucking dude. He's a piece of shit. Like, let him die. But they
But
still
then
made it where
the
like he
absolute,
wasn't
but then the absolute idiocy. I think you and I talked about this of like he just says like, "Oh yeah, I am Knight Titus," and it's like you could have very easily just said like he was killed and I'm his
took the armor
squire.
and
I
carried on the
took the
mission.
armor and like I'm bringing him in. Like I did the right thing. I'm still pursuing the target. Could have just been honest like from the get-go, but and then of course he does
I
the
mean,
same
there's a
thing
little
again
bit,
with Lucy. Some of the stuff is just arbitrary. Like we're setting dramatic stakes just so we can have conflict. But it's a
but there's a
show.
little bit of
It's a
Fallout 3 lore. I did do some refreshing on Fallout 3 lore with the Brotherhood. Fallout 3 was a good 20 or so years before this. That the Brotherhood had
Yeah,
turned to more like
we should
do-gooding.
say every so this is the furthest in the timeline
Yes.
thus far. In the
Yeah.
canon timeline, this takes place beyond even, you know,
I think
what's
it's
the furthest
what,
we
10 years after?
10 years after 4? It's either 10 or 15 years after 4.
Yeah, somewhere in there.
Yeah. Okay. Continue.
But that there at the time of Fallout 3, the Brotherhood had turned more to do-gooding, at least in the DC area, but there was a breakaway faction that was going more back to this like pseudo-religious like cult following. So maybe that's what's taken over, and maybe putting on the armor is too sacred, and he would have been like publicly castrated for it. Like they are a weird fucking
Right.
organization.
Yeah.
So that did help kind of make a little more sense, but at the same time, when you saw him being like, your cock explodes like a pimple, you can tell how fucking weirdly sheltered this dude is, and his understanding of the world is nil.
Yeah, absolutely. That definitely made him very endearing in a way that I was not expecting. But yeah, that was oddly like one of the more adorable fucking things
Do you
I've
want to make
seen in
my
a
cock
show.
explode now?
Yeah, great
Yeah,
delivery, great everything.
fucking
So yeah, really
die.
turned the corner on him by the end. Uh, Goggins, of course, just like stellar throughout. I mean, he's basically the secret weapon of the show. Where I'm like, again, I think she's an incredible lead, and I think the show would be super strong and successful if that was
Absolutely.
it. But like, Walton Goggins just literally elevates everything that he is
Everything.
in to
I do want
like
to clarify
the
my
next
issues
level.
with Maximus are with the character, not with the acting or the writing behind it. I thought it was
Right. Yeah.
extremely well
That
written, and the
again,
art was incredible.
that's why I refer to the character. Yes, I'm not the actor
Yes, I
whose
just
name escapes me
my dislike is
because
only of the
who I should
character.
shout out because I did yes, I agree. Thoroughly enjoyed the performances all around. But
But no,
yeah.
Goggins is absolutely like the dark horse that just takes everything up a notch. I mean, the fact that there are so many people thirsting over a desiccated radiation zombie on the internet
So
right now.
yeah. So Aaron Moten is Maximus. And of course, Ella Purnell as Lucy and Walton Goggins as the Ghoul slash Cooper
Has
Howard.
Aaron been in anything else that we would have seen? I didn't recognize him at all, but
I think
Yeah, I
he
don't think I've
is
seen anything else.
kind of a newcomer. Let me take a look here. Up 27 credits, so definitely been doing some stuff. Hold on here. What do we got? He was in Emancipation, the Will Smith Apple movie, Father
Oh,
Stew, the Wahlberg movie. What else we got on here? Oh, he was in the Night of, the HBO
huh.
miniseries.
I thought
Uh,
this
Ricky
night
and the
of
Flash, the or not De Palma, the Jonathan Demme movie. Uh, Top
maybe nothing,
five.
no breakaways, but
Yeah, nothing that's been on my radar, obviously, but yeah, enjoyed him quite a bit. Uh,
I do want to give a quick little shout out to the casting that I most enjoyed from like the B squad was Thaddeus, who I knew as Bo from Superstore, which is this little weird goofball. That guy was absolutely fucking fantastic. I do not know his name, but he really did it for me.
oh, yes, Johnny Pemberton.
I don't know if y'all have watched
I think
Superstore. That's one I was watched during
no,
COVID.
I think I mainly know him from the 21 Jump Street, 21 and 22 Jump Street movies.
I
He's
don't
in there
remember him from anything.
briefly.
Oh,
That's
yeah, that's
gotta
right. He
be,
is.
yeah, that's gotta be what I know him from more
No,
than
he's a
anything.
recurring on Superstore, and he's a
He was
ridiculous
enjoyable.
caricature, but he's endearing.
Zach Cherry, who most people will know from Severance, always a welcome presence. He
Oh
is
yeah, dude, love that guy.
that's Woody. You have the guys in the bunker who are like the other guys who are going out for like being the head of the vault. Uh, I don't know if you recall them, Barham. Anyways,
Yeah.
Zach Cherry, very memorable. But my favorite kind of cameo, of course, Fred Armisen as the
Oh,
as the
fucking
local radio DJ. That was I love when the show would just like take a moment to just step outside and just be like, we're just gonna take a
it's not
beat,
on it. It's in it.
just be really fucking funny,
Also,
just be
it
really
feels
fucking
like
funny
his one
right
of his
now.
characters from Portlandia just
Absolutely, it
survived.
literally felt like
Yeah.
we just dropped a Portlandia sketch into, and I'm like, dude, and Kyle MacLachlan's already in this show. I'm like, dude, if it ever just wants to like just go
But
off
that
on
is
a
the tone
little
of the games, though. That is
flight
the
of
tone of
fancy,
the games. That
very much so.
100% fits in.
Yeah. Uh, yeah. Anything else we wanted to hit? Obviously, I we talked about this. I'm a huge New Vegas fan. I'm very excited for where it's
Oh,
potentially
absolutely.
going. I told you I jumped back, or excuse me, I jumped into 76 uh, because it's free on Prime or free on PlayStation Plus right now. But just after our conversation a few days ago, Barham, I was like, dude, I really just want to be able to use VATS again, like the way it was
Fuck
intended and the way it
yes.
was made. And so I
Absolutely.
uninstalled 76 and reinstalled Fallout 4.
Yeah, I've been playing the last
Still
week.
had my save file on there. I finished up the story and everything, and I was still like level 47. So what I'm doing right now is I'm working up to level 50 by doing like other random shit I had around, and they added a bunch of like just superfluous quest
Well, they just
lines
like
in
2 days
there
ago had a
because
big
of
update that came
the next
through.
gen
Yeah.
update. They added a bunch of other stuff. So my plan right now is I'm doing I'm gonna get up to level 50, and then I did purchase the Far Harbor update, and I'm gonna wait until
Far
I hit
Harbor,
50, and then I'm
Nuka
gonna
World's supposed to be cool too.
yeah,
I will say
then I'm
Nuka
gonna
World seems
venture
pretty
over to
cool.
Far Harbor and see what happens
I've
over
only
there.
ever touched Far Harbor. I started over, so I'm up in like the like high. I'm up at like 17 or 18 right now. But I'm just it's so easy to revisit it, and like I mean, just with the show, it encourages you to kind of like go and explore different little like through lines and not just stick to like the one thing you get sucked into.
Absolutely.
Uh,
And that's the thing with 4 is I very much kind of mainlined the quest, like main quest, like because it was in a period where I was actually playing a bunch of different games, and I remember being like, I'm excited this is out, but I can't let it distract. Like I want to have a beginning,
you
middle,
gotta
and
let it
end
distract
experience
you.
with this.
Gotta let it. It's so
But
good if you
that's
get
what
into
I'm saying
distraction.
is that's what's so great is going back now and being like fairly like leveled up and having a bunch of shit to play around with as I just go explore and like just find stuff, go craft, like,
Okay, the
it's very fun.
no
Good
spoilers
time.
with Far Harbor because I haven't played through all the main story. Because again, the main stories are not my appeal to these, or not what draws me into these games.
Yeah.
But you can get a fucking like harpoon launcher, like some big
Oh, I
old like Boston whaler harpoon launcher. It's fucking great,
very into that.
and the
Very into that.
Fahana accent is just it's delightful. I love a Boston accent. It's atrocious on the ears, and I love it.
I can't wait. Can't wait. All right. Brother, any final thoughts on Fallout before we move along?
Um,
Oh, no. I mean, I
just
have a
that
wrap up for this whole conversation, but any final thoughts on the show or the
I just want to
games
thank our sponsors, Vaultec and Nuka-Cola, and look forward to seeing you in the wasteland.
for you? Okay. The big question, you alluded to it way earlier, Gav. The big question is now that we have somewhat of a proven track record, if we want to go into the world of movies, by the skin of its teeth, like the Uncharted movie did fine. It did okay.
Hmm.
The Sonic movies have been very successful.
I gotta watch that new show.
I
You know,
Dude, I
I
was so mad. I saw the show. I didn't think the Sonic movies were successful, and I saw that new one and Idris Elba being in it. I was just like, "What is this? It looks terrible." I mean, I don't
well,
want to give it the time, but like,
I will say I had a very like whatever fuck this like attitude towards the first one. Subsequently went and watched it once it was streaming. Totally charming movie. Actually like really fun. Gotta be honest. Like pretty
okay.
fun. I have not watched the sequel, but anyways,
Sequel is good.
they've been very successful. And then in the world of TV, we've now had The Last of Us. There's been some things like I believe like Arcane on Netflix. I know Netflix has also had like the Castlevania series and a lot of like animes
The Witcher.
that are video game Witcher. Thank you.
Yeah,
We've had some pretty solid examples thus far. Fallout, I think, kind of like kicks the gate open in another way where I'm just like, somebody cracked the code on like doing it the right way, quote unquote, the faithful way that still manages to make
having
like
fans write
an
it, having fans control it.
an entertaining, palatable show for like a mass audience that it doesn't sacrifice anything of what like makes those games those games. So the question is, what's your one that you want, and why is it BioShock? That's the question.
I mean, I can tell you one I heard
Do either
rumors
of you
of.
have a counter? Because the whole time I was watching this, I was like, okay, you guys nailed it. Same thing. Can we make
Not knowing
BioShock
much about
now?
BioShock,
Can we
I would
fucking
agree.
make BioShock now? Because I think we
What I
can.
can what I can say is I know I've heard rumors of a Zelda thing, and I do not want it. I do not. Just as a little opposite
So
to counter that, I do not want
Zelda,
a Zelda.
okay, the one I did not mention in all of that in the movie world, the fucking Super Mario Brothers movie was like the second highest grossing movie, or excuse me, third highest grossing movie of last year after Barbie and Oppenheimer, I believe.
Hmm.
Massive success. Super fun movie. Super
Yeah.
fun movie.
Yeah, but Zelda just has a
Nintendo,
different vibe. I cannot
no,
see how Zelda would ever work.
Barham, I agree with you. I have no idea how they're gonna do it, but regardless, they are doing it. That's the thing. They are doing it. And and just know in the same way that like we lived through Uh, we are still in the midst of it, even though I truly think we are in like they are like nailing the final nails in the coffin right now of the superhero like era of filmmaking. Like it is dying a slow death
It's
at the box
capitalism.
office,
It got
but
too big and it
but
died.
it's happening. And I'm just telling you, video games are the next thing. Video games are the next thing that are going to like
Understandable.
fully ascend, and you're gonna get sick of them. You're gonna have bad ones,
But they've had
exactly like,
quality writing.
yes.
And they've had such quality writing. I think the comic books thing or the superhero thing is that they didn't just go comic books in general. They went superhero comics. And yeah, you wrote that to death. The video games, at least, you have a lot of variety, and you have so many more that are coming out that are
There's so
cinematic.
much story,
So much story. Even
so many different stories, and again, to the
my
point of
parents are
Fallout
watching
taking
Halo.
a
My
that's
parents
fucking
are watching the
wild.
Halo series. Like
Oh, dude,
I haven't even
that's another good series too. I love that
I've heard
show.
it seemed I saw like 10 minutes of it. It looked
Oh,
pretty
dude,
good.
it's great. I forgot I need to finish. I got like 3 episodes in the
again
second season.
another one that like just completely forgot it exists. It's like they've been steadily like the quality level has been rising. The trust level also with the gamers themselves of like, oh, you guys are actually like we're not just being completely ignored. People are actually kind of like they're getting it.
Right.
They're not running away from the thing. They're not it's not fucking Max
They're
Payne
not deviating from
where
the source code.
with Mark Wahlberg where we go in and we're just like but they gave you the blueprint. Like they gave you the story. Why did you take all of the story and just like turn the knobs to the left and right and fuck up everything about like the world building and stuff that's in those games?
And the feel, we
Why?
want more lore. We want to see
Yeah.
more stories. We want to see a new story told. Just this time, instead of in a playthrough, it's in a watch.
Yeah.
And I
Like
don't
that's
mind
what
that
we want.
Pablo Schreiber is the Master Chief. So yeah.
Okay,
But
I'm
like
sorry.
I think with games though, there's a lot more variety to explore than just purely superheroes because you're seeing wider. I mean, I guess a couple. It's like sci-fi or futuristic, post-apocalyptic, but there's a lot more to draw from if they
Absolutely.
can figure out how to do it for other styles. I mean, like Super Mario Brothers, like you said, like that's one of the oldest properties. That's great. The
Yeah.
Sonic stuff.
So again, I'm throwing my hat in for I think specifically like Amazon,
The
if you're
BioShock would be
going
great.
to invest more into these,
Um,
BioShock would be my ultimate because I think you've now seen again people that have no affinity for the games or whatever. I feel like have to be fascinated by like the aesthetic of the show, that retro
oh,
futuristic vibe.
absolutely.
And so if you
It's
show
so
them a
great.
trailer for BioShock, something that it's like I can kind of wrap my head around what this is aping, but it's like but it's still its own thing because it's dialing it even further back to like, more like, just
Victorian era,
post like World War I like era, like more noir, like, you know, 19
steampunky kind of.
it's
Yeah.
kind of steampunky,
Did you
kind
guys
of,
ever play Dishonored? Like this Dishonored,
yeah.
like like that one. I never got into. I don't know. I didn't get that far into it, but that aesthetically, that I think would be interesting. Um, the other big thing you could do, I was just thinking about this as far as like series and stuff. I just had it on the tip of my tongue. What was I thinking about? I don't know if you want to argue that like no one should touch it because FX just did a great series about it, but like Ghost of Tsushima as like an if Amazon wants to get into like I'm gonna make like an epic and like kind of do something to
See,
compete with FX kind
that's
of thing.
another one where I almost feel like we get into the territory like we're talking about with
Yeah,
Last of
it
Us, where
is.
it's like that game is trying to be so cinematic and is aping like samurai cinema, where it's like that would just feel like, well, aren't we just slapping the name on like a samurai show? You know what I mean?
Right.
Unless they
But
were
you're still
literally
going back to the
recreating
source
that story
material.
from the game, but
You're
Yeah,
still going
yeah.
back to the source material though. If the source material for the game was a genre of movie or show, then like I feel like you can go back to that. I just think it's more impressive now when they're taking a game that has been its own independent thing. I mean, it's like the Dungeons and Dragons movies, like talking about like Fallout going back to role playing games, in the late '90s. I think '97 was the first one. It's like the World of Warcraft movie. Like that was seemed pretty successful. I enjoyed it. It's going back to something from the '70s. Like you just have
yeah.
this source code of
Yeah, Gab, what happened with that Resident Evil Netflix series, dude? Did you watch any of that?
I did.
Yeah.
and they, I feel like they canceled right afterwards, but like Lance Reddick died shortly after it premiered, so like they kind of
Mhm.
had no choice. But
Gotcha, but I mean,
it was an alternate like it was, and I loved it because I'm like, yeah, sure,
of
Wesker's
course you
black,
did. I was gonna say I heard
dude.
nothing but terrible things
It
about
was
it, but of course you
no,
fucking loved it. I love
dude, I
it,
thought it was
brother.
great, dude.
Gavin, I
It's
love you for
Resident
that.
Evil. It's Resident Evil. It's my
But
favorite game series.
every
I
time
loved
I
Welcome to
see,
Raccoon City,
I know you
and that
did,
was a
but every
terrible
time I
movie.
see like one of those, I'm just like, why can't they just make a limited series and it's just called Resident Evil, but it is just Resident Evil 4, the game, as a TV series? Like, fucking Leon Kennedy has to go rescue the president's daughter. Like, why can we not just make that as a season of television with no prior context? Just fucking just do it.
I mean,
Establish a new canon where it's like, hey, we're actually going to make this good for once.
dude, all you have
Maybe
to do is
that's the
write it.
approach this time.
You just have to write it. That's
I
all.
think you have to write it. I don't have nearly the passion for that series that you do. Now, if somebody wants to let us co-write a Metal Gear Solid show that Konami has zero involvement with, and they let us rehire Hideo Kojima
If I
as the
ever have the money to
showrunner,
finance it, I'll give it to y'all.
hell yeah.
I remember
Uh,
you not being able to go out because you were like, I'm in the middle of this like hour and a half cut scene playing this game. I remember that like our
the
schedule was built around the fucking cutscenes of that game when y'all were living together over in Colombia years ago.
I was playing through Snake Eater. Yeah, you turn a corner and just like, oh shit, or no,
It was
it was
4.
four. It was Guns of the Patriots. That was the one with the like, oh my God, yeah, you like literally walk into a room, fucking an hour and a half later, you're
A
like,
feature movie,
oh, I
a
just watched
feature
a
length
feature
movie.
film and now I can move my character. Incredible, incredible stuff.
No,
I think there's 10 hours of like 10 and a half hours of cutscenes in that game.
that's a full season of television. That's a full season of television right
I
there.
know, I know. Dude, Death Stranding 2 next year. Super pumped. He's a madman. Highly recommend for both of you if you have Hulu. It's kind of surface level, but I enjoyed it nonetheless. And it's like barely an hour long. But I think it's Hideo Kojima Connecting Dreams or something like that. I don't know what the subtitle is. It's on Hulu right now, but it's just a documentary about him making Death Stranding and like starting his own company post Konami and his whole ethos and everything. It's fucking cool.
Did you ever
Connecting
see the
Worlds, I think. Yeah.
Did you ever see the bit with him getting all this stuff from the Criterion Blu-ray, like all the films he chose? Was pretty dope.
Oh yeah. I love
I
the
bought
Criterion Closet.
yeah, that's
One of my
yeah,
favorite YouTube series.
definitely.
How about maybe we should transition into a movie that might be in that closet one day.
Oh yeah,
Boys, want to talk about Civil War?
Oh, let's
sure.
talk about Civil War.
Okay. I will say from the top, I've seen it twice. It's my favorite movie of 2024. It is the only stone cold 10 out of 10 I have seen thus far this year. That's where I'm coming from. I know you guys got to it after me, so I'm gonna let you guys give me your thoughts. I'm curious how you feeling.
Go ahead,
Well,
Barham. You good?
so I had seen like one review that was kind of mediocre and was like, oh, it's fine, and it kind of doesn't really say anything. And so I was tempering my expectations until I heard you talk about it, Noah. I was like, okay, I'm back excited again. And I think every critique I heard in that review, I forget where it was, I disagree with entirely. I think it had a lot to say. It just wasn't picking a side in any like current, like specific political thing, like political issue. But I think it had plenty to say about just you know, the nature of how things can escalate and how they would end. And I think they chose a wonderful viewpoint for that. Um, Particularly in an age, I think it's really very relevant to show it through the eyes of journalists who are looking at, getting shot for reporting on something. I absolutely fucking loved it. I I have no critiques of it, really.
I was gonna say this is one of those where like I kind of saved it for last because I was like, it might just be one of those boring conversations where it's just like, hey, you guys remember the
Oh, I mean,
fucking
I could talk about. I can get
The
it.
Chris Farley SNL thing where it's just like, hey, remember when that happened? Remember remember when you remember that scene? That was good. That was a good movie. Um, Gavin, what'd you think? Big lot of lot of hype going into this one because again, this is one of our boys for decades.
Which one?
Um,
Sorry, what's that, Barham?
So which
it's
one? Plemons?
Alex
No,
Garland.
Alex Garland
Okay.
just as a creative, like
I mean,
basically,
to go from writing books to
Gavin
writing
sees,
screenplays to
yes,
directing some of the best television ever, some of the craziest movies ever that are some of them that are about like based off of books, and you forget, oh, wait a minute, there's a whole series. He did one movie that's a series of books, and we're never going to get the answers to any of it. It is what it is. Um, Talking about this, so like talking about we left, went to Walmart, and Becky just goes, you know, the whole movie's about like getting the money shot, but like there's no context to it as to like what it means to get that money shot, like what's actually happening in there. And I'm like, yeah, dude, you just solved it. This whole movie is just about the nature of like current media and how things are reported and how like you can't really trust anything, even the images that you see, because you weren't there. Because there's constantly times in this movie where you're being told things that aren't true, and you're only realizing they aren't true when the people on the ground are telling you, nah, that's not right. Like, I'm here. I've been dealing with this. This is what's happening. You know what I mean? So to me, it was like a microcosm of everything that works and doesn't work with modern American media and journalism and the dangers of misinformation. And also, I think it's to me, it's interesting and poignant. I don't know if anybody's hit this level of like Alex Garland, you know, is English. So like we came from there. So if anybody's gonna get to say what happens and like gets to call shots as to like, yeah, this will be my guess, it should be an Englishman. You know what I mean? Like it just on principle alone. And we're forgetting I don't people are talking about the fact that like this happens everywhere. This happens in Africa. This happens in the Middle East. This happens in Central America. Just the fact that it happens in your country, and this is probably the most honest look at what it would be like.
I mean,
You
shit, it's
can
the Troubles. It's Ireland in the '90s and the '80s. Like
exactly,
it's
yes.
literally that.
Hmm. It's just if you don't have the capacity and think you have the audacity to think, well, that'll never happen here. Watch what happens when it does. Because it does very clearly state, in my opinion, who the good guys and the bad guys are, but it also doesn't say who the good guys and who the bad guys are. You know, like,
'Cause it's not about like, okay, there's the North and the South. It's not as simple as like what we
hmm
think of as Civil War is
right,
good, bad, you know.
yeah. Because I mean, right off the bat, we're faced with with this information because we're told that, you know, the Florida alliance is being pushed back by the Carolinas. They're doing their part, and it's like, nah, dude, like everybody's marching to Washington. Like the shit's going down. It's not a matter of like if, it's when, and it's happening. And one of my favorite things that I've told I was telling Corey, I've only talked to Becky about this movie. One of my favorite things is just Nick Offerman rehearsing what he's gonna say.
So incredible. That
Fucking
was
brilliant, dude. Like,
like, and they managed to parody someone without doing any direct character references. He wasn't acting like this person, but I swear to God, if he had used the word bigly, it was the most bigly military defense I've ever
hmm
seen. It would have fit
mhm,
right in there, but like they managed to get the tone of just a despot on the last legs, like waiting
mhm,
without like I don't know. It felt it really it just put everything into perspective. It put everything in the right place. It set the tone for the whole movie.
mhm. Because I mean, if you're looking at it, you're like, who who else? Like, there's famous pictures of this happening. Who else like rehearsed what they were gonna say? Okay, meaning the guy was normal. The guy with the little mustache was a normal dude who just had this like agenda, and the only way he knew how to get it done was to like put on this facade and like this, like, this be this big person, but he couldn't do it without acting, without repetition, without saying it until he believed it. And that's the only thing I thought of in that opening shot of Nick Offerman is like, oh, this is any dictator. But in my mind, I went straight to Adolf Hitler preparing because they know they're the eyes of quote unquote their people, the world, whoever they're, you know, have the authority over are watching them and they've got to project strength and like they'll be positive and be, we're going to be,
It's their only
everything's
chance.
great. It's the only chance you got. But just
The
the
only way
idea of
forward.
him, right? The idea of him practicing it definitely just, I drew vibes to that and whatnot. And again, I, I think I don't understand people's criticisms with performances or it not saying or saying this. I'm like, it says exactly what it needs to say. And if you don't understand what it's saying, you need to watch it again.
So I'm just gonna say,
Maybe.
Well, the contrast with the very ending too, where you had that little in between where someone said it's like all the big ones, all the ones that get Gaddafi, like everyone, it's like they're always some smaller man than what you expect, and you see that practice, that repetition at the very beginning to just to the very end, just please don't let him kill me, and that's all it is.
Yeah.
Like that, the
in
contrast was so
again, in a movie
perfect.
that's filled with like so many jaw on the floor type moments and just like whoa baby sort of moments for me personally, that in particular was one of the wait, I need a
But also,
quote.
it's the picture. It is the
Please
picture, and
don't let them kill me.
well,
That'll
it's like,
do.
but those
That'll
iconic,
do.
it's like that picture and then the narrative that goes with it. The picture of the guy jumping out of the truck that was just hit with a missile and blew up on fire, and the context that goes with it.
Yeah,
It makes you think about like all these, like everything from the Vietnam War, from Desert Storm, all this. It's a picture and the story associated with that picture.
yeah.
So you're getting to see the story actually unfold, and then the picture that we would all have seen afterwards. Like
Yeah.
it gives the context to those iconic images.
Did either of you see this in like large format or IMAX?
No, I needed to, but I didn't. I had to go to the one of the
Regal, it was the curved screen, but not IMAX. I forget what they
Word.
call it.
I was just curious how
RPX.
the sound was. I
Yeah,
went to one of
yeah.
the SSX screenings or whatever, and it's slightly large format. It's like Limax, whatever you want to call it. Uh, but some of the most like visceral sound design I can remember in
Oh,
a theater
jarring.
in a very long time.
The,
Uh,
the first real
just
combat.
well, that the juxtaposition. I think we're going to lose Barham here, so maybe we'll kind of feign for a bit while he jumps back in. But yeah, the juxtaposition of silences and like ear splitting, like very realistic gunfire.
Hmm.
Um, Something I felt like I had not experienced in a theater in a long time. That was very very intense. But no, I was curious how it was for you guys because like Evan has seen it as well, and they saw it in just like a normal screening. He said it was still very like it
Oh
was
yeah.
palpable. Same thing with Tim and Elise as well. Uh, but yeah, the sound design incredible. Barham back, got Barham back up.
Yeah, it,
Okay. Yeah,
I'm
we're
on
just
my
talking.
iPhone hotspot because the Wi-Fi is doing weird shit.
You were all good. So we are just saying sound design like on another level in terms of like very visceral. You were referring to the
Sorry,
first like
it
real
was, but
combat scene when you kind of zip out of the, and it's because you've had
the
the very quiet night before with like the gunfire in the distance and like
and then
then
into
you have
that gunshot, and then the
mhm,
concrete exploding, like it, I mean, it felt like jarring and shocking, but it felt like that just only suited the narrative. It was perfectly designed for that moment
yes.
and for making you feel what they were feeling. It was just that abrupt like shock out of that earlier feeling. It was
So
incredible.
that's an early like holy shit sequence that kind of like urban combat, like we don't quite know what the sides are into uh the soldiers being taken in and cut to De La Soul and then those guys being executed. Uh
Yeah.
One of, you know, kind of the first early like confirmation that it's like, hey, just by the way, we're not really doing like
It's not a war movie.
This is not yet. No, or this is truly a war movie where I'm not like we're not going into, oh, this side is better than the other side because ultimately they're all doing terrible shit. And prior to this, excuse me,
Well,
before we even get to that, we have the gas station scene, which
oh
we
yeah,
got to stop and talk
that's
about
a
that for a
soft lead
second.
in,
Yes,
but also
Evan
like
and I talked
that
about
first
this, the heart of darkness structure of like as they, early on things are like, okay, like we're on a road trip, we're seeing some stuff. Obviously, like the stakes are pretty high, but it's just the escalation and the set pieces get more and more intense and more dire as you get closer and closer to, where we end up. But anyway, so dialing it back, I feel like the gas station
but
is kind
also
of the
like I was
first one.
saying, just in terms of that like that tonal shift when like the music shifts and everything's that happy. Like, how the fuck do you think you keep people doing horrific shit, like killing people, getting killed? How do you keep
Hmm.
people doing that shit? Like you have to have like the human fucking mind will create those uplifted moments to keep you going on that. You have to.
Yeah.
Like otherwise you just fucking put a bullet in your own head. So like that's that mind that immediate high. I've never been more scared, but I've never felt more alive.
Hmm.
Like it fit that tone, I think, very well in a way that most war movies do not. Because it feels like it's inappropriate to have that like celebratory tone, that heightened, that uplifted feeling,
Hmm.
but you have
Well,
to
again,
balance that out.
all of
Like,
the needle drops very very purposeful. Sometimes very ironically so. Sometimes just because it needs to hit the the heartstrings. I had never heard that Sturgill Simpson song that plays later, but anyways, okay. You've got the kind of initial bombing sequence, like very early, like the kind of opening scene, that to me just establishes like, okay, like anything could happen at any given moment, essentially. Like this world we're being thrust into is pure chaos. So basically, like I never got settled to begin with, and then the movie proceeds to kind of just for me operate on a constant level of just like, oh, the dial is always at some level of tension, and then it just adjusts to
oh
like
yeah.
more extremes, but it's like I never relaxed at any point after that opening scene, which I thought also brilliantly captured like kind of everything in a quick little nutshell, where it's like we see somebody acting in what they think is like this like heroic way, where it's like, okay, you just killed yourself, a bunch of other people who were just trying to get water and like protesting this, but like, and cops, yeah, which I'm sure was your ultimate goal, but like everybody is like fucking fucked up in this situation. And then we have our journalists who are the people who the first fucking thing we're gonna do before checking on anyone is we gotta photograph what
Documents.
just happened. Like we're straight into it.
Yeah.
And I was just like, it's so like firmly set the tone for like everything. I was like, okay, I see kind of where I think what we're trying to get at and what we're approaching for the rest of this movie. Let's go. Yeah.
You know what the
But I
brilliant
think
part
I think
about all
that too,
that
because
is?
that seems like
Say again,
no, go
Gab.
ahead.
No, see, the brilliant part about that opening scene is like you don't like we're not told. Is that is that a weekend or is that 30 days in? We don't know. We don't know where we're at in this process. But as you
We don't know what
pull
year it is.
exactly, but as you pull back, you start to
We
see
know that
like,
he's a
okay,
third term president, so the people that if you
Well, and
want to
we
draw the weird, like if you want to try and like literally make him a Trump analog, you still would have to like basically account in your mind roughly. Again, I think the movie is firmly saying like you're not supposed to be thinking about any of this. Like that all of that shit is beside the
no.
point. But just extrapolating this out, let's say that like he wins re-election this year and then he becomes a third term president, so that would be like 8 years from now essentially.
Well, so you
mhm.
had another
Before,
like
yeah,
tie-in because she cut her teeth. The fuck, what's her name? The lead,
Kirsten Dunst,
Kirsten Dunst. Yeah, I was trying to remember
the
the character's
Queen.
name. Yeah, she. Anyways,
Struggling for the name of the Queen, I think is what
I,
you're. think what you're struggling to say.
It was Noah.
If we can
But
just
they
pause
established
for, I'm sorry, if we can just pause for a moment. It's the first time she's been brought up. I think this is one of, if not her best performances in what I
absolutely
think
best thing
is
I've ever seen.
maybe the most underrated career of an actress in her age group. I think she has always fucking killed it, and she is so good at just disappearing into whatever character she's playing. But because she's quote unquote
Absolutely.
a big ass movie star, you don't notice the subtlety of the work she's doing. But it like really coalesced for me when I was watching her in this, especially for the second time. But it like knocked me out the first time through. I was just like, she has no bag of tricks. She doesn't,
No,
she
she
never
just is
goes,
the character.
she never goes to a well of emotion that I've seen her do in other movies. She's never like playing the same scene. Oh, I've seen you do this before. It's just whatever's required of that character, she fucking does it. In this, as Lee, she is
Lee. Yeah.
she is the most like tired, haggard, world weary person I have ever seen in a movie, and it's all just on her face.
And
Like
it's
all you
intentional.
need to
It has been
do is show
intentional to
me
do
her
that.
face. You don't e I didn't even need the extremely, extremely effective, just quick montage at the top of basically like this is what's in her head at any given moment when she's just like relaxing or in repose is like all the fucking horrible shit she's seen. We
Oh
get the
yeah,
shot of the
photographing a
dude
tiring,
getting,
like,
yeah, just like all of that. I was like, I don't need any like boring bullshit exposition on this character to tell me who she is because visually in like 30 seconds between her look, her demeanor, and a little bit of like brief visual backstory, I know exactly who this person is. Like,
absolutely.
and that extends to the rest of the cast. I thought everybody was like uniformly excellent. My dark horse for best supporting actor at come next year is Stephen McKinley Henderson, uh, who just absolutely like stole my heart as he does in everything. But
Well, but I was gonna say though is that with Lee, they do establish a timeline. They establish when she got her break, when she became famous, because she became
yes,
famous for photographing an Antifa massacre.
yes. What I love
So
about
that
the
feels like that would be present day.
I was gonna say, what I love
So
about the
10 years Lee would
specificity
be
of that is the lack of specificity. Was it Antifa being massacred? Was it
love it.
Antifa doing a massacre? I don't know. I don't fucking know. It was just the Antifa massacre.
No, and I love they left that open because it allows you to literally just fill it with everything that's going on now. Like if you just open up a news feed, you can fill it with whatever the fuck is
Yeah.
happening right now.
So okay, we
And
have
that's what makes it like potent. I think it'll give it staying power.
yeah our road trip crew. We have Steve McKinley Henderson, who I just mentioned as Sammy, the kind of veteran journalist who's like maybe shouldn't be on the road, but
Who
he's
fear?
along for the ride. Yeah. Kaylee Spaney, who has basically had the torch passed to her by Kirsten Dunst. She's the upstart journalist trying to get her break, trying to break into the game.
Looked
And then of course,
17 in the beginning.
oh, she has a
She
remarkable
ages through the
ability to
movie.
look like a dude. Watch Devs, and you're like, that is a like
I've been
that's like
meaning
a
to.
12-year-old. How
Is
are
that
they
Lyndon
acting
from
like that?
Devs?
That's fucking Lyndon.
Dude,
Yeah, dude.
I turned to Bex and I was like, dude, everybody from Devs is in this movie. It's like Devs plus like Wagner Moore from Narcos.
Oh
And
yeah, dude. You
that's
even get
everybody.
a little Carl Gussman shows up with the sniper rifle. He's the
Dude,
spotter.
I couldn't tell because his face was so like
Oh,
messed. I was like, is that
I get
fucking
it. You're
Carl?
stupid. I get
Yeah,
it. You're an
you
idiot.
did. Yeah. You know what else Carl Guzman was in?
Dude, that
A
was
little show called The Idol.
oh, this is true. This is true. Sorry, just to jump ahead to that sniper scene.
Oh,
Another
dude,
one of
yeah.
one of the we only get a few little moments of comedy, but the guys shut the fuck
Fuck
up.
up.
And the guys, I have good news. Both of those just absolutely killed me.
So good, so underplayed, just like
Dude,
deadpan at
Gavin, the sniper himself, the one who takes the shot, that's the boyfriend in fucking Devs,
Wait a minute.
isn't it?
Is
That's
that
our
the
whole book. Barham, close your ears because you haven't watched the show. But I mean, Gavin, isn't that our boy who like gets killed, and you're like, oh no.
but then they get to end up together at the end of the day? Because yeah. I think you're right.
I'm pretty sure he's
I
from
think
Devs
so.
too, dude. I think he basically like pulled everybody from that cast back in again. Uh, okay. Yeah,
Are you
because holy
talking
shit,
I
the
mean,
embedded
yeah,
the
but
embedded journalist, dude. The two embedded journalists, the female, was she not the lead of Devs?
Yeah.
I'm just now putting all of this together. Like, no, literally the entire
No,
cast was
civil
in this movie.
no, the yeah. With the exception of
holy
that dude,
shit.
because I don't see the kid who is in Devs. Well, no, it is. Yeah, that was him. He's listed as in it. I'm assuming that's he has to be the sniper then, which is crazy. Yeah, no, the other embedded journalist is the guy from I know him from Yellowstone. That's the only one I um
No, I was saying the female, yeah, the female embedded journalist. That's
yeah,
Sunny
that's
Mizuno.
yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Anyway, sorry, we got lost in a Garland rabbit hole, but that's what happens. Uh,
But I also love the contrast of that scene because you had those soldiers, and I equate them with having been a part of whichever army um
Clemens.
Jesse Plemons was because they had the same the weird bright colored paint. Just
Mm-hmm.
that it also showed just this whole thing of like regardless of what army they were in, what cause they signed up to fight, these were isolated little groups and they definitely went off in their own fucking directions, left to their own
Absolutely.
devices.
Just
Like it
highlighting
just it
that
showed
like
this
bottom line
the diaspora
when
of
you
it.
break society basically like when you take the societal gloves off, you empower a bunch of dudes who were like have been waiting for their chance to be this fucking dude anyways, you know what I mean? That's where it really got
Oh,
into
and
I
even
was
the
like
guys who don't
it's
haven't
not
been
even an
waiting for it.
indictment of like one side or particular like mentality in a way that to me it was like it's almost to me it makes it I get how some people are like, oh, it's not really saying anything. And I'm like, maybe because it's not adhering to like some particular
Well, you know,
political stance that you want it to make.
Noah.
But by removing all of that, to me, it makes it more fucking scary. Like it makes
Well,
it
you know what
more
what I have to say to
believable.
that is war never changes, Noah.
Uh, I mean,
No, it's the
fucking
same thing. Game of
cut the
Thrones.
pod, dude. The pod's over. You finished it. It's done. It's done.
You have it's the same thing though you get in like Game of Thrones, at least within the books. You get some of it in the show, but where you show like these armies, they have their old goals. But once you get away from like the nobles and the people leading it and their whole purpose, you definitely have just little groups of these people that are doing their own fucking thing because they're out in the middle of whatever world you
Yeah.
have,
Well, again, the idea
empowered
that
with an
like
army,
uh
and just left to their own devices.
Kaylee Spaney and Kirsten's parents are like, oh yeah, they're back in the Midwest somewhere, like pretending like none of this shit's happening. And then you also have the implication that it's like, well, you guys are there and you're documenting it, but you're still trying to like exist outside of this. You know what I mean? Like you're still trying to remain
It's a
objective
weird morality of
and
yeah, the
not and
observation
not
versus
choose a side. And that's where I think like the Wagner Moore character, Joe, is so interesting to me because I'm like, this guy is so clearly like a fucking like action junkie. Like he just gets off on like being in the midst of this shit.
well, and he's
But
obviously
at the
dealing with
same
it.
time, he doesn't have the other like bone in him to pick up a gun and choose a side in this conflict either and actually like take part in it. But he wants to exist like right on the edge of it and kind of almost like
I read
getting off on it
that differently.
vicariously.
That more
But
as
like but when he's actually confronted
see, I
with
read that more.
God,
I was just with him. I feel like it's less that he. I mean, he definitely had that like that feeling alive. But I read it more as that he and Lee kind of were on the same thing, but they just different ways of dealing with it. She shut out the emotion. He feels it and drinks and smokes it the fuck away to get sleep whenever he can, and
hmm
just feels it in the moment and then shuts it down chemically. Whereas she has like trained herself with this like this one to like not feel it, which you then do see eventually break.
oh
But
dude,
I read that differently.
her
It's less of him being an action junkie and more of that's this is his only way of coping with it is to feel the high and then pull it down to bring yourself back to Earth. I read that like, they had a very similar like starting point and just
Mm-hmm.
learned to handle it in different ways.
Word.
But I do see what you're saying though, is that like that he's
I do
definitely
I do
getting
like
high
the
off.
I do like the late late in the game reveal of like, oh yeah, the whole reason he invited her along was because he got drunk and was like trying to hit on her the previous night,
Yeah.
the younger journalist
Mhm.
and everything. It's just like, yeah, not a good dude. Not a good guy, kind of asshole. Okay, but anyways, we had the sniper sequence, which I think then dovetails into like kind of feeling like, oh, we have a respite. Then, oh, there's a car approaching from the back. Oh, it's actually our journalist buddies from earlier in the movie who are like been following us down here. And then the whole like back and forth car thing, whole time I'm like, guys, I feel like you're having too much fun. This doesn't feel good. This isn't like I'm like something bad's about to happen. And again, leading into the whole Plymouth set piece, which is just like, again, I think the movie has like multiple like maybe this is the scene of the year and like this is one of them. I think again the De La Soul montage earlier is one of those where I was just like, dude, this is like on another level. Um, this is one of them as well. This whole set piece.
One
And
of those
I
memorable, even
the
though
thing I
such a
could not
small
get out
part.
of my head, particularly watching it the second time with a little bit of remove of like, okay, now I know how everything's gonna play out. But I'm just like, dude, like they they filmed this scene and then like and then they went home and they like tucked their kids in and like and they like slept in the same bed and it was probably like, hey babe, like really good job today. Really good job today being like, the most
You don't
fucking
know that. Maybe they
terrifying
went to a
dude on the
bar and stayed
face
up
of the
all night
planet.
chain smoking and snorting cocaine. Like
You know,
they might have had to
who
deal with this shit, dude.
Who
Who
knows?
fucking knows?
I'm just saying the idea that like that's your spouse, yo. Like that's your fucking partner and you just watch them like go to that place and then like you guys go home together at the end of the day. That is like one of those acting things that I'll never quite be able to process. We're just like, that's fucked up, dude. That is
But
fucked up.
as much as like with Jesse Plemons in Breaking Bad, you get to see this like development of the character and you see that like inert evil, just that like lack of any empathy in there. This managed to do something similar to that in, I mean, minutes, just
Hmm.
minutes. And like, I mean, between him and Nick Offerman, I'm honestly not sure who had more screen time. I think it might have been Plemons, but like it was very
Probably is. Yeah.
like, but the impact that both of them had on it was such little actual screen time. Like it was just incredible. They managed to give you so much through so little in that little performance.
Yeah. I mean, immediately in the Creep Hall of Fame, and the punchline to that whole set piece, one of the more rousing moments I've experienced in a theater full of people
God, through
when
fear.
when because okay, so the way that scene is staged too, like when there's a moment when he's like, "Who's your friend hiding back there?" And for a second, I'm like, "Oh my God, he sees." Um, is it
Sammy.
Stevie? Sammy. Like, oh my
Through fear and
God,
Hollow,
like,
but
does
it's
he
Sammy.
see Sammy there in the background? Like, holy shit. But he's actually referring to the Chinese guy that he, is going to shoot point blank. Many like point blank executions in this movie, every single one of them like caught me off guard and was like, oh fuck, like
Oh,
every
it
single
hit.
time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It really fucking hit.
So, anyways, when he does like get the van and plows through and like and it's like the hero moment, I was like, fuck yeah. And then immediately in the back of my head, like movie brain, I was like, well, he's definitely dead, right? There's definitely no way he lives now, right? I was like, of course they give him the big hero moment. I was like, you know, I feel like I've seen a lot of the like DC siege sequence from the trailer. I was like, don't remember Stephen McKinley Anderson running around. I definitely don't
Yeah.
remember him running around.
I will say that does bring me to one of my
And
favorite,
go
like
ahead.
my favorite through line to the whole movie was, so at the end of that, the picture that she took of him, that Lee took of him through the glass of him dead,
Yeah.
deleting it after she had been asked, like, so if I get shot, like, would you take the photo of that?
Yeah.
And said, yeah. And then to just the ending, the way that whole through line of that, just it was
It's good
fucking
stuff.
poetic. It
Yeah,
was
dude.
absolutely poetic. But yeah, his and just the whole explanation of, like, there were a lot of ways he could have died, and there's a lot that would have been worse that he would have preferred this over.
Yeah.
He didn't
Um,
want to quit.
but yeah, that whole sequence again, I'm not super familiar with Sturgill Simpson, so that song like totally hit for me, like having never heard it before. And that
That
whole
one's up there when he won
drive
all the awards
through
for.
the like the burning forest and everything. Just great stuff. And then we're into, I mean, what is maybe, I mean, again, scenes of the year, but like the entire Siege of DC sequence. Again, bearing in mind, this movie was made for $50 million. Like most
God damn.
most movies like approaching this
How?
subject matter or this scale would easily be like 150 out of the gate. Like they just would.
How, with all the
And then
recognizable landmarks,
and
did they
then you
do that?
also and then you also sit there and you're like, most Marvel movies just like from a baseline 200 mil to
Easy.
end up looking like absolute garbage 80% of the time. Like just from a just Barham, you are
But
literally
there's
an
some really
artist.
fit people
But I'm saying, but
in
Barham,
front of
you are
that garbage.
literally an artist, like a professional artist. And I think you would objectively agree that the visual aesthetic of the average Marvel film is dog shit.
Horrible. It's
And
absolutely dog shit. It is lowest common denominator bullshit.
exactly. And
And
the
this
idea that we
somehow
spend
using
four
landmarks.
times to get to that is insane to me. So
Well, and
yes,
also, like, this is all within like 2 hours of where I lived most of the last decade, like Charlottesville, DC. Like, I know that Virginia countryside.
mhm.
This is like within 2 hours of where I lived for like 8 of the last 10 years.
I didn't
It
even think about that.
But it
Yeah.
also made it feel so, like, it felt at home. It felt relatable to everyone. Like, you could see a piece of wherever you come from in this. Just aesthetically, everything
We
was gorgeous. I was amazed they did it for that little
we
budget.
breezed over it, but to jump back to it, that moment in the gas station, uh, where he has the two dudes that he's torturing or whatever, and it's like, yeah, we went to high school together, didn't talk to me much. And the dude hanging there is just like, dude, I got like fucking kids. And I'm just like that I thought was a great, just little tiny
It just
distillation of like I
petty
how disturbing it
tyrants.
would be if it got there and how, yeah.
Oh, no, and I mean, we Tari and I, the first thing we talked about getting out there was just like, we were like talking about Tari was like, I fucking love that, which I wasn't expecting, because Tori, like, loud, violent things,
Hmm.
typically not Tori.
Gotcha.
And the first thing the came was just, or they looked at me and just were kind of like, I think we'd lose,
Uh-huh.
like us. And it was just that immediately, like, you put yourself into this, like, because that felt so like real and relatable. It was just that little, like, yeah, like, I don't really like this guy. He was kind of a douchebag in high school. So, like, who's the
Again,
fucking
settling
jock
scores
now?
because there's nobody to tell you not to. There's no structural like, you know,
Well,
there's
and for amusement, you make this little fucking, like, who looks like a child at that point in the movie. This person tell you, like, yeah, should I shoot him, or should we just beat the shit out of him for a couple more days and then we'll let him go?
yeah.
Like, just because it's fun, it's entertaining to put that on somebody now. Like,
Okay. Uh yeah, Gav, what do we compare it to? The DC siege sequence, like what are we putting it up against? Are we talking like are we talking Zero Dark 30, take down Bin Laden? Like where are we
Yeah, I
what
would. Yeah,
territory are we playing in?
that's the closest thing I could equate it to. I
In
think it.
terms of like visceral, like
Yeah,
feeling like how it might actually happen kind of thing.
that, and then I mean, obviously, any of the recreation scenes in Black Hawk Down. Um, it's yeah, it's up there with one of those. It's I don't know. It's interesting again because, like I said at the top, like you're told one thing, and then everything is then actually no, the people on the ground are telling you something different. And I love the way that it's subtly explains everything to you without telling you anything. So when they get there and they're like, "Oh, dude, you're too late. Like the siege is happening now. The army surrendered." It's okay. The army surrendered. Did the army surrender, or were they all executed like, everybody else? Is there no U.S. Army anymore? Do we know that because of what we've seen in the past? And he says, "Oh yeah, it's just like the hardliners, like the true believers. Those are the people left defending it." And I love that throughout everything, you have no idea who is who and what is what. And I think that is what people's big gripe is going to be, is that they don't know what's what. But the beauty is in it that it doesn't matter what's what, because you could look at it as like they're about to go take out the United States president. There's a whole series of movies about like, oh, the president's like under attack and a secret service agent has to help him out. But
Oh
it's
yeah.
Jerry Butler, and or oh, it's Channing Tatum because it's Jamie Foxx is president. There's a whole like just action movie love fest with that idea of like, oh, or the president's gonna start kicking it, and now it's like it's flipped on its head. And it's like, what if that dude was like really a bad actor, and like the America we all know and
Dictator.
love
Yeah.
isn't there anymore, you
Mhm.
know? Because and how would you know? And who would you know? I think I've mentioned several other movies in the past that have like kind of broached this subject as like a thing in the background of a movie, but never like head on like this. But as far as any sequences, yeah, Zero Dark 30, any sort of I'm just gonna say this, and it's just gonna sound ridiculous, but like any sort of like real life thing that Michael Mann has shot on like
I was trying to think of a
whatever,
man
something like that,
sequence to like
any kind of man
specifically
see
highlight, but I agree. It has that
the Black
verisimilitude
Hat,
where you're just like, yeah.
Black Hat, where they roll up on him with the rocket launcher and like the shootout there, anything Public Enemies or Miami Vice, like just visceral how it would be. I think it's that. I have no idea. I don't know if they
To
did
be
model
clear, I
stands
also
in.
think that for me personally, I think this like outdoes all of that stuff that we're talking about. That's
Oh
kind of
yeah.
why I bring it up, where I'm just like, I don't think I've
And
felt
also
that
like
like literally like fucking locked in,
well, like Zero
claustrophobic,
Dark
like
30 or
exhilarated, terrified, all of that simultaneously. And again, Zero Dark
with
30,
all
it's
these other
like
things
I
like
knew
where
how it
things
was
have
going to
happened.
end. I knew, yeah, exactly. I knew how it was going to end. I'm talking,
Like
but in
and
terms
so
of like
we're piecing
choreography,
it
putting
together.
you in like a, boots on the ground feeling like you're there, very technical, very like, you know, that side of things, which again, something we always respond to in movies where it feels like, oh, they fuck like this feels again like it was incredibly well researched and like how this would actually happen. These people feel like they actually know how to use these weapons, these tactics, etc. Like we like to.
Well, and so like when Tari said like that first thought of like, oh, like I feel like I'm worried like we would lose. It's like, well,
Hmm.
who's the we?
Right.
Like, does that rely on one particular person winning an election and then like things dividing? Because again, it's not going to be neat and clean divides. And I love that the movie did that. It was Texas and California, two of the most diametrically opposed state governments.
Yeah.
However, two of the biggest and most powerful. Like, but so there's not like a particular ideology that's shown to anything because things don't split along those
Other
lines like
than
they
one
used to.
that's
They would work.
broadly anti-fascist. Like that's it. Other than the idea that like, oh, if a fascist president happened, like maybe people would put aside their fucking differences and realize that like maybe
Maybe.
that's the
Well,
guy
hey,
worth
UT
going
Austin,
after.
UT
Yeah.
Austin, fucking rocking it right now against that shit. But
Yeah.
like
Yeah,
yeah,
but
you get
what
this thing where
what
it's
what
like
kind
they
of American
they
are
put
you?
in like whatever you see happening, whatever is currently going on, and it doesn't rely upon a particular ideology.
Yeah.
It's how that ideology is enacted. Like it's not about like any one particular issue. It just puts it in that like state because but things wouldn't split down. Like the what are they gonna like? Okay, separate into two sides, and each state pick a side, and then we go to a neat
Yeah.
little war like the American Revolution, where we march at each other
Well,
with
it's
rifles. Like, no,
like
it's gonna fucking break down
as soon
chaotically.
as I walked out of the movie being like pretty, like I said, pretty fucking floored by it, basically being like, that's a like 10 out of 10 masterpiece for me. That's like everything I was like hoping it would be able to do and still did it in a way that I didn't expect and like was just kind of in awe of. But I also was like, I know there are going to be people on both sides of the political spectrum that will love and hate this movie for completely different reasons. And I was like, that in and of itself is, I think, a triumph of it as a piece of art. The fact that there will be
100%.
that there have been so many people that have watched it and somehow are like, this thing is empty. It has nothing to say. I I fundamentally do not understand that argument, but the fact that somebody could go through a movie that to me is this visceral and still have that like response to it, it's kind of fascinating to me. The fact that it has still generated a bunch
What
of
it
different
is.
takes is great. And I think again the movie in many things that it's trying to say is kind of advocating for at the end of the day some conversation before it escalates to this
Yeah,
point
absolutely.
of getting
Because
this
what it
bad.
has to
So
say is
so
not
I think
about which side is right or wrong. It's
exactly.
about the fact that if we fucking blow up like this, it will devolve and people will die. Or you'll have people in America getting tired. Like you'll have people in America getting like doing and having done to them the things that we
Well, the idea, like
look at in some
you
article about
mentioned earlier,
African
it's like,
nation.
yes, this happens. Like, how many times have we seen like footage, for instance,
But it's never
photographs
here.
or
It would never
video?
happen here.
That's what I'm saying. Exactly. Of it happening in other nations, either like dictatorships being overthrown or terrorist activity or whatever you want to call it. Like, and we look at it, and it's like, oh wow, it's all we make jokes about it in our media, et cetera, et cetera. But the idea of like, but if it was fucking happening here, yeah, it's like we'd be singing quite a different tune, would we not? Uh,
And regardless
yeah,
of which tune you're singing, it's gonna be bad. It's just gonna fucking be
that's what I'm saying.
bad.
Again, I think one of the most thought-provoking movies I've seen uh in a while and really, really stuck with me to the point where I was like, again, a lot of like singular images that I was like, cannot quite get those out of my head. I had to go see it again very, very soon after the initial. And I don't,
Absolutely. I will probably
I
go see it as
really,
well.
I really hope that something from the rest of this year is like able to you know, battle it out and maybe top it for me. But I think a firm contender for what will probably be my favorite film of the year by the time we get to the end of this. I do want to ask you, Gav, just because you're usually a very generous rater, and you gave it a 9. I'm curious if there's any element that holds you back. Also, if this is not your favorite Garland, because I think for me, favorite maybe I need to see it a couple more times to have the conversation, but I think indisputably, I think it is his best and most well-made film in his filmography thus far.
Um, so the reason why I gave it a 9 was just because honestly, I didn't feel that there was any need for like I get she's been through a lot. This is like tested her and all that. I didn't really feel like there was a need for Kirsten Dunst to be killed or to be shot. We don't know if she's dead.
I
Um,
so
Yeah, I was gonna say ambiguous.
I thought
ambiguous, much like everything else. But it's one of those where like I struggle to give it a 10. I would probably have to watch it again because I'm sure there's things I missed with like hearing like I heard certain things about like, oh well, they had help from Russia with this and this group had that and all there's just all this other stuff. And I'm sure there's other things I missed that would like maybe make me cue it in. But as far as all that goes, I put it at that because I don't I love that character the character that she is and it felt like okay, we're really gonna do this thing where like we're doing the reversal, and it's like you called it out at the beginning where it's like, would you take my picture if I got shot? Because I'm new at this and I don't know what I'm Jesse. I'm new. I don't know what I'm supposed to do. Please teach me, Lee. We're really gonna do the reversal now. Like I get and I noticed it, and we
it's
talked about how
symmetry and it's maybe a
yeah,
little neat, but
that's about what yeah.
what worked for me in it was the way it's played afterwards, which to me is like she's fully like
She
the
can't
Kaylee
hang
Spaney
anymore.
character. Well, also, yes, the breakdown of Lee, like in the lead up to that, I think is
Yeah.
incredible.
Beautiful.
Yeah, yeah.
Like,
Absolutely wonderful.
which is just literally again, it's she doesn't verbalize any of it, but it's like before that sequence starts, you have the moment between Joe and what is fucking Kaylee Spaney's character name?
Jesse.
It's Jesse. Thank you. You have the moment between Joe and Jesse where it's like, oh, shit's about to get wild, and like he smiles at her and she smiles at him, and it's like we we're fucking in it. Like we love this shit. We're ready to go. And then very quickly into that sequence, you're already seeing that like here's like Lee is not she's not okay. Like there's something about now being even though she's been through probably way worse shit, like maybe even closer
I
to
think it
it
was
in other
it was
circumstances.
deleting that photo.
That
She changed.
I
She
think
deleted
it's
that photo.
I think that is the moment, but then all the collective like also being confronted with like on some level, like, yes, I've seen the worst of the worst, but I've never seen it here. I've never I think finally being like confronted with it is like something she wasn't fully prepared for, even though she's been racing towards this story the whole fucking time. And it's that ultimate breaking point of like again, and it's like, yeah, you see Joe have this big emotional breakdown at the camp before they go off, like, in reaction to Sammy's death. But to that point. But hey, gotta get the next story, right? Like, the story's still there. And in that moment when Lee gets taken out, because she's saving Jesse, because, shoves her to the ground and everything,
She finally took action.
because she's a novice, because she steps out at a moment when she's not supposed to, because she's still learning and everything, and Lee steps in, shoves her to the ground. She gets shot. Like again, a thing that I kind of was like, kind of see this coming a mile away because there's only one of two ways to go with this. You either
Right.
have the tragedy of the young girl, the upstart who like wanted to be a part of this and didn't realize what she was getting herself into and dies as a result of it, and like Lee has to bear witness to this and like, oh, the tragedy, blah, blah, blah. But that moment of she gets killed and the performance of Kaylee Spaney, like literally just kind of like sitting up ramrod straight, like the story is in that room. And she does give her dead friend, her mentor, a brief glance like over the shoulder. I'm sorry, I choose to read it as like I know she has a vest on, but I choose to read
We
it
don't
as
know that
like
she was.
the White House. I choose to read it as the White House staff probably like had armor piercing rounds at this point because they knew they were
At
going
least
up
hit her in
against
the
like
head. Like, I mean, there's a million ways that she could have dropped. Like, yeah.
again, I'm just like in my head, she's dead in that moment. And so for me, that is like Kaylee Spaney literally sits up, like I said, gives her the briefest of glances back, but then she's like, well, the fucking story's in this other room. Like, I still got
There's
to
nothing.
go in
Yeah, there's
here.
nothing you
She
can
has
do.
completely finally kind of like crossed that Rubicon of like, I've been through a lot of shit. I've had like a trial by fire in a way that like, yeah, it was super ramped up. It was over the course of like a week, but I've lived through some shit now and she's fully hardened and she is that person who's gonna like continue to
Well, and
just like blindly, chase the next thing.
I will also take it as an endorsement of the two ways I mentioned of handling this kind of heavy shit.
Hmm.
Use drugs and alcohol and feel your feelings rather than keeping it all bottled up inside, or you'll break down and fucking die at the peak of the movie that is your life. So, I'll take that. But yeah, I think it was just that like her having to come to terms with what her own way of figuring out how to handle and deal with this shit was, and it was that passing of the torch. That was it was the most poetically, and it might be a little too perfect of a poetic way of doing it, but it's also
Yeah.
this is media. This is the lens through which we're being told a
I
story.
was gonna
You
say
like give it that
it might
license.
it might be a little too perfect, and then he cuts to credits and slow fades up that picture as Dream Baby Dream by Suicide plays, and you're like, no, this is perfect.
Oh, we literally stood
This
in
is
the theater.
perfect.
We had waited a minute and then got up and started walking out and then stood like just kind of watching the picture slowly fade in more and more. Just that was oddly captivating for a fucking credit sequence. And like, fuck Marvel
Yeah. Oh,
and all
oh,
their whole like, oh, you sit through it, you get a little like 30-second like preview. Fuck that. This was so much better.
hell yeah.
It made you sit with everything you just watched.
Absolutely.
And just yeah,
Gav, talk about Wagner Moura for a minute, dude. I feel like I didn't give you a chance to.
Oh
You're the
no, I mean
Narco. You're the Narcos guy. I've never seen Narcos.
dude. I mean, if you think he's great as this, just imagine him as Pablo Escobar. I'm just saying, the ruthlessness, the
I gotta. I
gut,
mean, I gotta
the
be honest. It
mustache.
it kind of immediately made me want to like go back and actually watch that show.
You should, dude. It's pretty good. He's really good. He's in this other series with old girl from The Handmaid's Tale on Apple, but I can't think of the name of it. Like
Oh,
Shining Girls,
I
I think
just
is the
saw
name
it.
of it.
I just saw a trailer for that, I think today. Yeah.
Yeah, but he's
Fuck, what's
great.
her
I wish he
name?
was in more. So I'm so glad that he was
Elizabeth
like,
Moss.
yeah, Elizabeth Moss. Yeah, I'm glad that like that he was cast in this. I think more people should like definitely know him and like stuff that he's done. I think thought he was great. I again, it's just thing where like they're in your if you're looking for some sort of like what does this all mean and all that. If you're trying to put anything on it, if you're trying to find something in that, again, I go back to the idea that it's like this whole thing leading up to this whole thing, it's like we got to get there, we got to get the story, we got to have this done. It's like about being in it and doing that, but really, it's all just an indictment of like our like to me it is anyway. This is my take. Is it's all just an indictment of like modern reporting and like current media and journalism and how easily we can be like led with misinformation and just like you only really can trust somebody who's like there on the ground like in the shit reporting. You can't let it be filtered through something or another because there's so many times where you hear things in this, but then the people who are on the ground are telling you no, that's not right. Like we were here, we saw this, we know what's happening. You can't really trust what it is, and it's just this weird
It's
thing of
high.
like
Sorry, go
no, go
ahead.
ahead. No,
I was
finish.
just
You're good.
saying, yeah, it's highlighting the importance of journalism, but particularly a particular type of journalism and approach to
But I would even
journalism, a
go.
commitment to
I
like
would go a
kind of an
step farther.
old stand. Continue, Bear.
Oh, I was just like, if you take that a step farther, that it's, I would say it's less of an indictment of it, but just an examination of the fact that, yeah, you can't trust what people say, but even people on the ground, like memories are skewed, perspectives are biased. That photo is the only thing that is like, it is a fact. It is like whatever is in that photo happened and was happening in that
Hmm.
moment. So I think it's more just an examination. I personally see it as less of an indictment, but just that examination
I
of the
was
fact
gonna,
that even those perspectives are skewed.
yeah,
That
I was gonna
photo
say, I had even
solid.
heard just some like tangential stuff online of people being like, what, like, it doesn't even make sense. Like, why are they still photographers in the, like, wouldn't they be shooting video? And I literally even had the thought of as I was like, dude, what do we talk about constantly? And again, the idea that this is like a little bit in our, in our possible future. It's not like literally, 2024. I'm like, it to me, it inherently makes sense that it would be film still photography that can be unfuckable with basically, that cannot be doctored, etc., that can
It
be
is a
like
moment in
true
time, and that moment
objective
is legitimate.
fact, exactly, that it's not video that could be shot digitally and then manipulated in post or doctored with AI, etc., etc. I thought it was very, very purposeful that they were specifically still photographers and like, print journalists. I was like, okay, that
Absolutely, and
makes
we're like I
sense.
said, we're getting the context behind those, but like even those perspectives of those people, if they were to tell you the story, would be skewed from their perspective.
Hmm.
That photo is the only like um unquestionable like artifact of that moment.
Right.
So what does it say that Lee is the one that's using digital photography and Jesse, the younger upstart, is the one that's actually using like still photography? Because we see
The
Lee
Gen Z is going to
delete.
take it back.
Exact. Yeah, exactly. Like it's an indictment of like, again, maybe you want to again,
That I
if you're gonna
definitely agree with. Yeah, that it
because
is
I
an
mean
indictment of
she's
the modern system.
there's nothing that like nothing that Jesse take because it's like oh, I'm developing my, my film here on the go. And it's like, okay, this girl, for whatever reasons, like she knows what she's doing and she's here for a specific thing. And it's like like you said, to honestly get like the photo because
The artifact of the
it's
moment. Yeah.
on celluloid, like it's being developed right then and there. It can't be doctored, it can't be manipulated
Well, and
in the
even
end.
with the deleting the digital photo of Sammy dead, like with a digital, you can just go in and say, I delete that moment. You can't do that with the film. You can't delete
Right.
your friend and mentor being killed and that moment being captured. You can't just wipe that off.
Hmm.
It's there. It's there with the rest of the negatives. You can't just go in and selectively take that out. It's everything that you shot.
Oh, yeah. Dude, okay. I think that's a great place to leave it, unless you guys have any other final thoughts on
Are we
Civil
gonna get a
War.
prequel? Maybe a little explanation about what's going on. Maybe like a little 30-minute, like
Again,
they did with
the
Alien Covenant, you
version
know?
of this movie that the people that
Maybe
don't
Nick
like
Offerman.
it are asking for sounds like the worst shit ever. I'm sorry, the version of this movie that like explains all the factions and how everything broke down and like has a fucking like World War Z level timeline of events and
Leave
breakdown
that
of
for a
like how
video
we
game.
got to this. Exactly. I was like, I don't
Leave
want
that for a video game, and
I
you
was
can
like, I
explore
don't
it.
want all of that shit crowding out a fucking 2 hour movie. I don't want all this bullshit. I don't
No,
want the
that
implication that we need
it
spin-offs and
rounds
like
out
sequels, etc. I just want a fucking story presented to me, a
absolutely.
world, like just fucking yeah. I
Like
again, I
that,
loved
leave
it.
just bring it full
Loved it.
circle,
So
leave that to a game, and that data can round out your experience in a game, your playthrough, your role that you are playing in a game. In a movie, we have a viewpoint that we're being shown everything through. You don't need that.
I got it.
absolutely.
I know what it is. So, shortly after this billionaire tech guy was murdered by his own AI, it came out that there was some weird science experiment that like a lot the government was doing with these ladies, and whether or not there were aliens or what the hell was going on with this lighthouse thing, and the president was keeping it all under wraps, right? And so, you know, eventually he was just like, I got, he felt like he couldn't let it go, and he was trying to figure out maybe some sort of like artificial intelligence or like memory thing to like maybe look forward in time or out of time to know what would happen, but he couldn't come up with that. So he thought the best thing to do would be to like, go ahead and take a third term. So all this turmoil is happening. And at the same time, over in England, they're experimenting with this rage virus, right? And like,
This is pure
as
Fallout canon
the
shit.
American Civil War is happening, like England is just getting ravaged and ravaged to the point that like, this guy wakes up 28 days later and it's like, oh my God, what happened to my country? And that's what everybody in America is doing. It's like, oh my God, what happened to my country? Because this crazy civil war
Okay.
happened after this AI
Okay.
thing,
This is
Okay.
pure
Okay.
Fallout. I love it.
No, but
Absolutely love it.
I don't know that Barham knows this, and I don't know if Gavin knows this either. This
I
would be a
do.
great way to
I
cap it
know
off.
it.
Of course
I
you
know
know.
it. Of course I know
So
it.
Alex Garland is taking a pause from directing potentially indefinitely, but he's not quitting screenwriting, and he is in
Good.
fact writing 28 years later, which will be directed by Danny Boyle and Cillian Murphy, Academy Award winner Cillian Murphy will be returning along with a whole other cast that they announced. You can go look it up online. But that is in fact happening, and it is the first in apparently a new trilogy. I don't know that Garland is going to write all of them, but 28 years later is happening with Cillian Murphy,
On
Danny
board.
Boyle, and Alex Garland all returning, and it should be out in 2025.
Dude, what if he wins an Academy
Love
Award
it.
for directing this movie and then it's like three Academy Award winners all working on one
I mean,
project?
That could be pretty cool.
That would be pretty fucking dope.
Yeah,
and any excuse for more Killian Murphy, I'm all about that fucking dude.
absolutely. Oh, he's gonna, dude. I mean, the next couple years, he's
Well, just
it's
you
another
want to tie it.
echelon now. Just
Well, you
having
can tie it back
the
to the
Oscar
whole like
titles.
we were talking like the comparison with like the Irish troubles and all the shit going on, the Civil War stuff.
Oh, dude, go watch
Like
When the Chicks the
he's throwing
Broilers.
up symbols. There was a video of him going around where he was meeting one of the royalty and he was throwing up a fucking symbol from the Irish resistance, like
Mm-hmm.
with the I think it was the hands in the pockets because they used to, forcibly assault anybody that had their hands in their pockets in Ireland. Like the dude's perfect for any of this kind of shit. Like he's just fucking wonderful.
Okay. So thank you guys, or
Well,
thank you,
thank you
Barham,
guys.
for joining us.
Well,
Uh,
thank
Yeah,
you
thanks,
guys
Baron.
for having me.
thank you, brother. Glad you're available. How's little guy doing?
Um, he's actually sleeping through the night a lot.
Well, that's
Last
good.
couple nights he's been like putting him down around
I was
like
gonna say,
midnight.
haven't heard a peep from him. You didn't have to leave like the
No,
room for a whole 2 hours.
I told Bex
Is the
if he wakes,
monitor on? Is the monitor in fact on?
it is. I told Bex
You
I was like,
abandoned your child.
if he gets too
I'm abandoned my
unruly,
child.
to text me and let me
Abandoned my
know.
boy.
and I will come get him if I need to, but she hasn't texted me, so I'm assuming if you can. So I've done this thing, like if you can get him in a sleep swaddle and you can just rock him, but if you can just rub from like the top of his nose to the edge of it, that bridge to that, something about that reminds them that they're back in the womb. And he's just like, if you just got to keep doing it to him repetitively, and within about maybe a minute or two, he's just like, and then he's out. Eyes are closed. It's hilarious.
Hell
And
yeah.
so
I'll
I
try
got him
that.
doing that today. It's like you feed him, change him, wrap him in that thing, get the thing going just to like get him to sleep, and then make sure the feet hit the bassinet first, and then the butt, and then the head, not head first. And he just roll him off, and he's out. And I think the longest he's gone is like 7 hours.
Hell
But
yeah.
he also wakes up like not mad, screaming for a bottle. You just usually unzip his little thing he's in, and he just both hands stretch out, and he's like, "Okay, I'm awake." It's like, "All right, let's get you up, get you some food, and you're good to go." So Becky started back work yesterday, and of course, I've been back for a while, but she started back yesterday, so we've kind of planned this right to have this little mini vacation to like go to the beach tomorrow, and then I think we've got, I don't think we got any more time saved up, but I'm just looking forward to like being able for the weather to be nice so we can like go to the pool at mom and dad's and swim and whatnot. We've got
Hell
a
yeah.
lot of stuff for him to do that. To want to get just want to get him in the water as soon as possible to be able to move around because I'm sure he'll. I mean, he's
Absolutely.
if you get a random off day and you want to just come and hang. Mom and uh, Becky's mom, they have split up what days they're doing what. So like mom came over today and like Becky went to work. I was here with him. Mom came by. As soon as she came in, he was in her arms, and I finished up getting ready and went off to work and came back, and she had him. So, like, if you got a random day and you don't have anything doing and you want to come up to Sumter and hang out with him and mom, just figure out what day mom's with him and
We're and
come up here and hang
if we
out.
plan a pool day, Barham and
Yeah, yeah,
Kari can come join us as well. See
yeah.
the little guy in person.
That'd be great.
Love to
All
meet the
right.
little dude.
Well,
Yeah, man.
glad to get an update. Thank you again to Mr. Barham Williams for joining us. We've been chatting about Fallout and Civil War. I have been Noah,
I've been Gavin.
and we've been the Blanchard brothers. This has been the ARK podcast. Thank you all for listening.
And if you haven't already, go watch Roadhouse on Amazon.
Oh
And
yeah,
then
the
Open
Roadhouse.
Range season 2.
Oh yeah, the
And then
Roadhouse episode that never happened.
yeah. It's
Roadhouse.
so good we couldn't talk about it. That's what happened.
Yes. Outer Range season 2. You said is on the horizon. We'll
That
talk
no,
about
that's what I
that.
was gonna say earlier about Fallout. That's their plan. It was like Fallout, they own April. Okay.
The
Outer
the
Range season
Nobody
2,
gives a fuck about Outer Range 2, dude, except for
they
me,
own May.
you, and mom. No one
Okay.
else cares. But The Boys is coming out in like
Right.
a month. Like,
June. Yeah, they own
yeah,
June.
yeah.
So they're gonna don't worry that you're like, oh, they could own like a lot more time. They are
Uh,
gonna own a lot more time, Noah.
just
They have two
just
more
plugs
series
for
coming out.
stuff you guys might want to check out, and maybe we'll come back and talk about some point in the future. The Sympathizer on HBO has been fantastic so far. Robert Downey Jr., Park Chan-wook. Uh, check it out. 3 episodes out so far, 3 more to go. That's the big HBO Sunday night show currently. Uh, that's all I really got. You know,
Dude, I finished all of
I gotta
Roseanne.
find some
Yeah,
other
yeah,
stuff.
nothing new.
I
Watch, yeah,
finished all
just
of Roseanne and watched all of the Connors. Like I'm caught up with the Connors.
I'm in.
6 seasons of that shit, dude.
I'm
It's
in
so good,
season. I just started season 6 of
dude.
my Mad Men
It's
rewatch.
all right.
Roseanne, we are. I think we are into season 3. Maybe no, we're still in season 2, dude. Those 24 episode seasons.
I know it's crazy.
Yeah.
Maybe I cheated by jumping to 3, but that's when I stopped watching. But I watched from 3 all the way through 10, which is only like 8 episodes until she said what she said and they canceled. And then I've watched all 6 seasons of the Connors.
Fair,
I'm caught. There was a new episode tonight,
Barham,
but
you
I
ever
didn't watch
watch
it.
Roseanne, like classic Roseanne? Like,
Watch what?
did you ever watch
Tuesday.
Roseanne back in the day? Yeah.
No, I mean I remember it being a thing, but I never saw it much. Sorry,
So
there's a train
we
going by.
Oh, no, I can't hear it on our end. Anyways, yeah, weren't allowed to watch it as kids. So then Gavin, at some point, like, in college, when did you start watching it? Watching it?
I don't. Yeah, probably like late college.
It's
I
just
like.
it's just one of those like I never watched like back in the day or whatever. Then Gavin, I come to find out it's like one of Gavin's favorite shows ever.
Yeah,
Veronica loves it. So like I just in the last like this year have started watching it. I'm like maybe one of like the five greatest sitcoms ever. I'm like it's
dude,
fucking
and it's
so
all
good
John
and
Goodman,
it's
dude.
not and the best part about it though is it is like not sitcom rhythms at all.
Nope.
Like none of the jokes are forced or like everything is fucking naturalistic as hell. I was like, I did not realize that like this was what this show is like. After like two or three episodes, I was like, this is kind of fucking brilliant. I like, anyways, yeah.
Yeah, the idea that like that was like killing it in the ratings. Like they were number one in their ratings for like three, four, five, if I'm not mistaken, and maybe parts of six. They hit Nielsen like number ones as far as like viewership. And it's one of those things where it's like it's because she was not a Mrs. Cleaver or Brady Bunch mom. She was like what most accurate representation of like a Midwestern wife and mother, you know?
Yeah.
And you say what you want to say about her now, but like again, the secret sauce in that show, as I've
Just
found,
fucking John Goodman. Just the you're like, oh,
John
they
Goodman,
have
but
like one of the
but
best actors ever.
Lori
Oh yeah,
Metcalf.
and Laurie Metcalf. Yeah.
The two of them, if that show does not happen without Goodman and Metcalf, and she only gets better. And as you get through that series, dude, I really want you. I know you guys take your time; you got tons of stuff to watch. But as you get later into that, and again, the Connors is all available between Netflix and then Hulu. Like, it's the whirlwind of it all is wild. It's one of those like I don't know when they're probably going to end the Connors like next year because I think they said they would let them know when they're going to be done. So it's not like a hey, you're done and you only got
Mhm.
12 episodes. So
Gotcha.
if they are going to ratchet it down, it'll be, but it's, I don't know,
Well,
it's slowly become one of my favorites.
I'll talk to you in 8 months when I finally finish the show.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
okay. I guess this will be our little bonus segment, but
Hmm.
it's almost two. I gotta go. Thanks for doing this, guys. I love both of you
All
very
right.
much, and I'll
Love
talk
you
to you
too,
soon.
brother.
You guys are
All
all
right,
See you
set, guys?
guys.
later. All
Later.
right. Later.
See y'all soon.